Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see everybody here this morning. Y'all look really rested this morning. Got that extra hour's sleep. Good to see everybody. We have some visitors that are really kind of not visitors. We appreciate all of you being here this morning. Come back and be with us when you can. If I were to ask you what time it is, what would you say? Would you say whatever time? That clock back there is wrong, by the way. I should be done 20 minutes ago. But, you know, when time changes, we start talking about time is going to change, or our time changed last night. Every time, of course, twice a year this happens, and Tanya always starts and she'll say, it's 10 o'clock, and it's really 9 o'clock. I'm like, no, it's not, it's 10 o'clock. You know, it doesn't change until 2 o'clock in the morning. We won't know about it when it does. So, but we make this claim that time changes. That's really a falsehood. Time does not change. It never changes. Our mechanism for keeping up with time changes because we change it, you know, twice a year, but time stays exactly the same. God created time. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in that creation, in Genesis 1:5, says God called the light day and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first days. So we have now days. We know exactly how to keep up with it. We know how many hours are in a day. And so when you think about time, time gives us a lot of trouble. It really does. What do we do with our time? Where do we put our time? And so when you think about it, the Bible really addresses time. It addresses time in many ways. Especially Solomon addressed it in Ecclesiastes, and in chapter 3, and in 1 through 8, and here's how he describes time for us. He said, for everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, there's a time to weep, and there's a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. There's a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. There's a time to gain and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. There's a time to tear and there's a time to sow. A time to keep silent, which most of us have a problem with. A time to keep silent, but a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. And if you think about what he described there, he really described what happens in our life, didn't he? There's a time for all of these things, if these things are going to happen in our life. But the question still remains, what do we do about time? You just have a problem with it. And the statement that all of us will make at some point in our lives is we don't have enough. We just don't have enough time, right? I ran out of time. But the reality is, you never run out of time until you die. That's when your time runs out. The rest of your life here, you have time. You have the time you're born and the time you die. Everything in between is your time. And it's yours to decide what you're going to do with it. We have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The question is, what do we do with it? You know, I'm a stickler. I cannot stand to be late anywhere. I will be early everywhere. And the one thing I hear from people who are late is that they ran out of time. No, you didn't. You had the same time I did. You didn't run out any time. Or time got away from you. No, it didn't. You wasted it somewhere along the way. But so you think about time. We claim not to have enough. But the reason we don't have enough is because we don't use it the way we need to be using it. And so there are requirements of our time. We all have these. There's a time when we have to work, except for those of us who are retired, and I won't rub it in. But we have kids. Kids take up a lot of time, don't they? They take up some time. We got to eat, right? You got to cook it or you got to go buy it. One of the two, you got to spend the time. We got to eat. We got to sleep. At some point, we got to sleep. We got to take care of our stuff. And this is where we get a little confused sometimes. Sometimes we get so much stuff that we have to spend all our time taking care of our stuff. And so we also got to take care of ourselves. At some point you got to take a bath. At some point. And then you got a hobby, or spare time. And this is where it gets real confusing, is how much of our time is really spare. Because there is spare time. We don't like to acknowledge it, but there is. And then there's time for God. So when you look at that list of these requirements we have, how much time do we spend on each one of those? And we all decide how much time we're going to spend on these. Now, we would like to say that we don't. We would like to say that we don't decide, but we really do. When I was working, of course, we ran our own business, and I was an admitted workaholic. And my whole thing was, we're so busy, there's just, it takes so much time to get these things done. But you know what? That was a choice. That was a choice. It's a choice we made. And so we have to make up our minds what we're going to do with our time. And to say that we don't have enough typically means that we're trying to do too much. And we don't have enough of it. And we have a tendency, we're not careful, to put so many things in our lives that we don't have time for the important stuff. And a lot of times we'll even do this to our own kids. We'll have them involved in so many things that they don't have time for the important things. We'll spend more time with sports or hobbies or whatever it might be that we have them involved in, and we don't have time to put God in there somewhere. To teach them we need to be at church, or teach them we need to be at Bible study, or we need to be studying God's Word. There has to be some time in there for God. And that's the question, is where does God fit? In all of this time we have, where does God fit in there? I saw this quote that if you're so busy that you can't prioritize God, you are busier than God intended. If you're so busy you can't prioritize God, then you're busier than God intended you to be. And he gives us, Jesus, when he was teaching in Matthew 6:33, he said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." Do you have time to put God first? Do you have time for God to be first? It's amazing to me, if you were to guess what was the number one thing people spend their time doing, what would you guess it would be? Put that in your mind. What do you think it would be? Watching TV. Look at this chart. Watching TV had the most time. Socializing, communicating means social media. That's the next thing where people spend their time. Playing games, computer, reading, sports, exercise, all these things. I got this list off the internet. What's missing in this list? God. In this list, whoever compiled this list of where we spend our time, worship, God, was nowhere in this list. So what do we do with our time? What did God say about what we do with our time? And he did tell us about it. In Ephesians chapter 5, 15 and 16, he says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil." Now what he's saying there, when you think about the word redeeming, we think that word redeeming, it means to buy back or get back. But we know we can't get back time. But the Greek word there, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it, means wise use of every opportunity we have. And I like the NIV translation of this verse. It says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." And so what God is trying to tell us there in his word is to use our time wisely. Time is the most important thing that we have. If you think about it, it's the most important and it's the most valuable. And you know what we do with it? So many times we waste it. We waste our time. We spend our time. We talk about, spending money frivolously. How about spending your time frivolously? Shouldn't we be looking at every moment of our life and every day of our life and saying, all right, what am I going to, this is my time, what am I going to do with it? And what do I do to make the best of it? When God said, make the best of that time, be wise with what you're doing with it. What am I going to do with it? And so we have to make up our mind. And one of the things that will help us make up our minds about our time is we have to find what our purpose is in this life. What is our purpose? And so many people miss the purpose of life. The purpose of our life here on this earth is really and truly not so much about this life, but it's about the life beyond this life. And that is to prepare ourselves for eternity. And so Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14, and we studied Ecclesiastes a while back on Wednesday night, and when you study Ecclesiastes, Solomon spends a whole book trying to figure out life. He was the wisest man that ever lived. I say that, but he had, 700 wives, 300 concubines, so I'm not so sure about that statement, but he tried to, through life, his whole life he's trying to figure out, what is it all about? What do I do with my life? And when you go study Ecclesiastes, that's what it's about. At the end of Ecclesiastes, here's what he says. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. Solomon concluded, and you got to remember, he had everything in this life you can imagine. Anything he wanted, he bought it. He built it. He had it. And he said, after having all these things and all this enjoyment of life and all these things I have here, my conclusion is, you need to fear God and keep His commandments. Because at some point, at the end of life, God's going to bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing. And it's going to determine where we go after here. And I think too many times we waste our time here on the temporary and don't prepare for the eternal. Because I want you to think about something here. What in this life is permanent? What in this life is permanent? You can't name one thing in this life that's permanent on this earth. Not one thing, except for one. And that's our eternal soul. Our soul will be eternal. And so when you look at life and how you're going to spend your time with it, what am I going to do to prepare my soul for the eternity? You know how quick this life comes by? I'm going to tell you. I was at the store yesterday, and I saw a couple. We coached a little boy in their when they played baseball, and they're a little older than we are. And I came home, and I told Tanya, I said, "Man, they have really aged. They've really aged." And then I realized I'm 66 years old. They're probably 10 years older than me. They're supposed to look old, you know? But do you know how quickly 66 years got here? You know, my dad kept telling me, time is going to go faster as you get older. I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But guess what? It happened. Your grandchildren grow up faster than your children. Much faster. And so we look at time, and you can take the oldest person here, and I won't point out who that is. But you could ask them how long did it take them to get to 90 whatever years it is, and they'll tell you it was a flash. And so that's what
God is trying to get us to understand. We're living this life, and He's given us this time. He's given it to us. Whatever amount of time we have, He's given us that time. And He says, I want you to use it wisely. Seek God first. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to enjoy everything in life. But He wants us to understand that the life hereafter is going to be so much better than this. You know, we talked about this morning briefly about heaven. What is heaven going to be like? Number one, it's going to be eternal. In other words, you're not going to have to worry about it ending. There's not going to be time there. But He said there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no death, there's no crying, there's no more evil there, there's no more temptation there. It's just bliss in the presence of God. And He said, your life here and your time that I've given you here has a purpose. And that purpose is, yes, enjoy this life. Enjoy the blessings that I have given you, but prepare yourself for the blessing beyond. In Matthew 16, 26 and 27, this is what Jesus said. He said, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world, but loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with His angels, and then He will reward each according to his works. And what He's telling us there is, make sure you don't exchange the eternal for the temporary. Make sure we're using our time to prepare ourselves for what God has prepared that we can't even imagine.